As the calendar tips toward May, the college basketball landscape is beginning to crystallize, but the game off the court might be just as intense as the one on it. With only a handful of top tier programs still holding significant resources, the final stretch of high stakes roster building is underway. And with each new commitment, the pool of impact players shrinks, pushing programs into a pressure cooker of decisions and strategy. Let's start where Razorback fans' hearts reside, with the curious case of forward Aidoo Theo. His recent Instagram post stirred speculation and stirred hope. It was a heartfelt farewell, or was it? A collection of photos and memories wearing that Arkansas jersey sparked more than nostalgia. It spoke volumes about what being a Razorback meant to him, directly challenging the tired narrative that today's players are just mercenaries chasing a paycheck. Theo's connection to the Hogs was real, start to finish, from the exhibition games to his valiant late-season comeback attempt. And that post, just cryptic enough to light the rumor mill on fire. Now, for clarity, can Theo technically return to college basketball? Sources confirm yes. Could that be at Arkansas? Again, yes. Since he never entered the portal, Arkansas is still on the table. But does anyone within the program expect that reunion? Sadly, no. Unless something unforeseen occurs, a draft stock plummet, or a change of heart, the consensus is that he's focused on the professional leap. Still, Razorback fans wouldn't hesitate to welcome him back in a heartbeat. Speaking of the draft, take a look at the numbers. Only 106 players filed early entry paperwork this year, a sharp drop from 195 last season and a staggering contrast to the 363 names in 2021. It's the smallest early entry class in nearly a decade. What's driving that trend? First, the 2020 to 21 COVID year eligibility cushion is expiring, thinning the eligible pool. But more critically, the rise of NIL, name, image, and likeness, has altered the equation. For many athletes, especially those outside of the lottery lock zone, staying in school now makes financial and developmental sense. Mid to late second-round hopefuls are asking themselves, do I fight for a fringe pro spot or stay where I can make six figures, grow my game, and maintain control of my future? It's a win for college basketball, no question. More returning talent means a deeper, more experienced, more competitive product on the floor. But it also trims the draft pool, making it easier for fringe guys to convince themselves they belong. As for roster building, things are heating up. Each new transfer portal commitment shapes the market. Look at Illinois. They just landed Andrei Stojakovic, formerly of Stanford and Cal, now one of the most coveted wings in the portal. A huge get, but his addition likely means they're out on Watkins, who plays a similar role. One less suitor for a high-value target. That's the domino effect. Elsewhere, Cedric Coward, a highly sought-after guard from Washington State, just chose Duke over Alabama. He's still testing draft waters, but his choice signals how selective top-tier talent is being and how programs must act swiftly and boldly to fill their rosters before the money and the players run out. So what does all this mean for Arkansas? It means patience is a virtue, but aggression will be necessary. As May begins, it's clear that the window is narrowing. The Razorbacks and every other program with serious aspirations are not just battling for players, they're navigating a new reality shaped by NIL economics, tighter draft logistics, and fast-moving competition. And while the names on the back of the jerseys may change, the chess match remains the same. Adapt, reload, and stay one move ahead. As the transfer portal winds down, the landscape of college basketball is beginning to take its final shape. And with that, so are the contenders, the power brokers, and the programs still waiting to make their final chess move. While the headlines have mostly focused on a handful of high-profile names, the deeper story is about who's actually in the market, who still has money to spend, and which programs are quietly positioning themselves for a late spring splash. Let's start with Duke. If they land the final piece they've been linked to, it's unlikely they'll pursue another wing. Instead, they'd shift their attention to finding depth in the front court, someone to back up Malik, Brown, and Gumba, and that would probably wrap up their portal activity. That domino, however, affects Alabama. Should Duke close that door, Bama suddenly looks like the front runner for Marfo, assuming Rylan Griffin doesn't bolt for Texas A&M. If they reel him back in, they too would likely be done shopping. UConn is another key player in this puzzle, with Alex Caravan returning. Despite legitimate second-round NBA interest, the Huskies are likely capped out in terms of big-ticket additions. He didn't come back for cheap, and UConn probably used up a premier and NIL slot to keep him. Florida's situation is interesting. They lost all three starting guards from their national championship squad. With Abron surprisingly committing to Kentucky, Florida responded by landing Xavier Lee out of Princeton, and another guard whose name hasn't gotten much traction yet. The Gators are now eyeing Desmond Claude from USC, a top 10 portal name who's not in the draft mix. If they get him, it likely marks their last major backcourt spend, although their name has also been linked to Boogie Fland depending on his draft decision. North Carolina, meanwhile, has shown signs of a late surge. They've been active, picking up Vizar and a talented point guard from Colorado State. But they've also lost key pieces unexpectedly, most notably Ian Jackson and Drake Powell, both presumed returners. That's created new urgency. They're very much in the mix for a splashy addition, perhaps someone like Watkins. Whether they're willing to enter a bidding war is the real question. Kansas still has room to operate, particularly with an eye on Darion Williams should he exit the NBA draft. And while programs like Texas Tech and BYU seem to have unlimited NIL war chests, other teams like Ole Miss are behaving like they're itching to spend. They've been linked to everyone from Chad Baker-Mazara to PJ Hagerty and just added a European prospect to the mix. Then there's Baylor, Tennessee, and Louisville. Baylor has reshaped its entire roster but likely isn't finished. Tennessee made major moves, 8 players added, but might now be financially tapped. Louisville has dabbled in a few big-name recruitments but doesn't appear to have much left in the tank. Michigan and St. John's appear to be close to done, while Indiana, West Virginia, Maryland, and Kansas State are still in rebuilding mode. Texas A&M, reeling from departures, is scrambling to find quality additions, and Villanova's Kevin Willard still has gaps to fill. Now to Arkansas. The Razorbacks are in a very unique spot. Their roster is solid. They've spent to retain and recruit, but they've yet to flash the kind of financial muscle we saw from them last cycle. No Jonas Aidoo level splash just yet. They've been disciplined, steering clear of bidding wars for guys like Morris Johnson, Michigan, or Keshawn Hall, Auburn. That doesn't mean they won't spend, just that they haven't needed to yet. They have the structure in place, and if Carter Knox returns, they have leverage. That's not desperation, it's power. Still, Arkansas hasn't made that statement move. Watkins could be that play. Would they throw $3 million at him to keep him out of the draft? That's the million-dollar or multi-million-dollar question. If not him, then perhaps a rotation sharpshooter and a stretch 4 to round out the depth chart. They could make those additions without nuking their NIL balance sheet. One thing that stands out, parity in pay structure. At Arkansas, there's no outlier making double what everyone else is. That avoids locker room tension and creates a healthier culture, which some programs, looking at Auburn, are currently navigating. When Keshawn Hall shows up with a $2 million deal and a returning player like Chad Baker-Mazara is getting half that, it stirs unrest. So here we are, the late portal stage. Some teams have gone all in, others are waiting for the right moment. And then there's Arkansas, calculated, stable, and in control. They're not chasing, they're choosing. And if they decide to make one more move, don't be surprised if it's the kind that turns heads and closes the door on one of the most strategic portal off seasons we've ever seen. After weeks of swirling speculation and relentless portal movement, Arkansas basketball continues to generate national buzz, not just for the roster reshaping under coach John Calipari, but for what's now shaping up to be a critical turning point in their identity as a program. With the Hogs closing in on what many believe will be a complete and competitive roster, the looming question remains, who's next? More importantly, who's worth the pursuit at this stage? That top-tier pool has thinned. RJ Lewis looks set on staying in the NBA draft. Darion Williams doesn't appear to be linked to the Hogs. And PJ Hagerty, that chapter's closed. Yet names like Jordanian Watkins are still floating. And if Watkins chooses to return to school, Arkansas could be a logical fit depending on how the market unfolds. Still, much of the remaining field consists of role players, not headline makers. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does mean Arkansas may need to look internationally or count on potential ncaa rulings like the fifth-year eligibility waiver to squeeze out more value. But here's where the intrigue deepens. This team may be closer than we think. Bracketology projections already have Arkansas as a projected 5 seed, up from a 10 last season. That alone signals marked improvement under Calipari's early stewardship. Though not quite at blue blood dominance yet, they're one shooter and some depth away from being a legitimate top 3 seed threat. The expectation, a rise, the path, strategic adds, and internal development. Yet the seeding isn't what stirs the most emotion. It's the destination. Arkansas is slotted to play in Portland, not St. Louis, not Oklahoma City, not even Tampa. Portland, a city that, while undeniably cool, sits at the opposite end of where fans hope to trek. It's deja vu for Razorback Nation, who've already suffered travel-heavy draws like Buffalo and San Francisco. A first-round matchup against an Ivy League sleeper like Yale in a far-flung city only intensifies the nerves. That's a recipe for anxiety and flashbacks to early exits. Meanwhile, the broader college basketball landscape is shifting beneath everyone's feet. The ACC, once the gold standard, is now in crisis mode. With only 5 teams in the early NCAA projection, the league is openly considering reducing conference games to salvage at-large hopes. It's a desperate move, one that exposes the ACC's erosion more than it helps. The contrast with the SEC is stark. A decade ago, the SEC invested better coaches, better players, better infrastructure. The result? Record-setting season and 13 teams in the field. The ACC, on the other hand, feels like a shadow of its former self. It needs a UNC resurgence, Virginia rebirth, and programs like Syracuse to matter again. Back in Fayetteville, the vibe is shifting from skepticism to stability. Calipari hasn't just retained key players, he's also kept his staff intact, something not many expected. While critics may debate the overall value of that decision, continuity has rarely been a bad thing in college hoops. After all, this is a group that made the Sweet 16 last year, and with a coach who's always been a magnet for talent and headlines, Arkansas fans can finally breathe easier. The rebuild is happening, but it's a reload, not a reset. Still, there's one message echoing through Razorback country. Don't waste this momentum. Nail that final roster piece, secure a better bracket path, and for once give the fans a March road that doesn't require 3 connecting flights and a passport. Because this team, it's close. Closer than it's been in years. Will they take that next step? Stay tuned, the story's only just begun.